Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Fizz here once again. I know it's been a little bit since the last upload, but the new Final Fantasy expansion came out, so I wanted to play that. Those of you who don't know, it's probably most of you, but I met my fiance in Final Fantasy back in like 2013 or so. So I always go back to Final Fantasy during expansions, and I tend to play a little bit off stream because it's, you know, it's like kind of a big part of my life in some ways. But yeah, so I didn't want to upload anything related to Final Fantasy on the channel, as I'm not really comfortable with branching out with how small my channel is. So just didn't really have any PoE related stuff to talk about, really. And I messed around in Endless Delve for a few hours one day while I was waiting in queue to get into the into Final Fantasy, but I haven't really messed around with it a whole lot. I don't really like Endless Delve, so I didn't really want to make content around it. But to get into the video for today, Gauntlet, right? It's going to be the same thing this time around as like it was last Gauntlet, but this time there's going to be a little bit more information in this video. So to break it down, I have the typical notepad formula that I usually use, but I have two separate tier lists here, and we're going to go through the notepad first, and then we're going to go into the tier list, and I'll break everything down when we get to it. So just know that it's going to be a few different parts. One thing to get out of the way first and foremost, this is the most effective things to play to perform well in Gauntlet. If you don't want to play these, you don't have to, but this is an objective look at what is the strongest in my opinion. Like personal bias aside and whatever, I just try to be objective as possible, and I think for 95% of this, most people would agree. A lot of this it's very clear cut this time around what is insanely strong and what is not. But a very important note to make, this is a class gauntlet. It is not an ascendancy gauntlet, okay? The only benefit for ascendancies is getting demis, and to be brutally honest, if you are in the running to get a demi, you do not need me to tell you what to play. If you want to play something really random like a Deadeye to get a demi, you're not going to be asking me what you should be playing, right? Like that's just the truth of it. So this is going to be more for people who just want really strong stuff to play to perform well in Gauntlet, to make it as easy as possible, basically. So to get into it, Shadow, for the Shadow class, I have everything separated by class here, and then I also have them in order of strongest to weakest. So bar and away, the strongest thing for this Gauntlet is Exsanguinate, Seismic Trap, Sab. I have no idea how this build got through last league without getting nerfed. It is insanely strong. They took the one massive downside of playing this build and completely removed it in this patch. So now it is just uncontested God King of all content. It is ridiculously strong. I'm sure you guys have seen some of my other videos kind of like revolving around this and my thoughts on it, as well as the shitpost I made about spell suppression getting absolutely murdered next league, likely with Exiled tanking two A8 Gauntlet Cirrus Beams back to back and just walking it off, right? Alk the other day was also doing some testing with spell suppression on Champ, and he was just tanking beams on Cirrus, and it did nothing. It did no damage. So yeah, spell suppression is probably gone. But Sab takes advantage of every defensive layer in the book pretty much this league, fortify notwithstanding. But yeah, you get determination, you get grace, which allows you to use molten shell, vol molten shell, and then on top of that you have spell suppression. You're just an unkillable god. And the big thing here, Sab has insane damage. Exsanguinate, Seismic Traps are like ludicrous damage. This Gauntlet is going to be insanely easy for Sabs. If all you care about is making this as painless and as easy as possible for you, Sab is 110% the way to go. It is the strongest, bar none, okay? That's what these brackets indicate. There's a large gap between Shadow and everything else. Everyone who is racing for an overall spot to win, that in my opinion has even a remote chance of winning it, is playing Sab, okay? Exile's playing Sab, Darky's playing Sab. Those, let's be honest, those two are the two that are going to be really gunning for top overall. Coming up after that, you have Witch and Duelist with Spectral Helix and Pale Champ. And then self-cast Detonate Dead Necro. For those of you who are inevitably going to ask, excuse me. For those of you who are inevitably going to ask, yes, you can play VD, DD Spellslinger if you want to. I think self-cast Detonate Dead Necro is going to be a lot stronger in Gauntlet because you don't have that ridiculous mana reservation problem that you have with Spellslinger, which will let you very easily fit Determination and other things in the build to just be a lot tankier. And because Spellslinger VD's like biggest weakness, like massive weakness, is it has very little Fizz mitigation, and you need some pretty insane gear to be able to fit Determination into that build. So going self-cast and dropping the Spellslinger setup will give you probably more damage and definitely a lot more survivability at the expense of probably clearing a little bit slower. But I've played a lot of self-cast Detonate Necro in the past. It's one of my favorite skills actually in modern PoE, and it performs really well. It's really strong and it's pretty fun too. It does map quite fast. You might think it would be slow, but it does map quite fast. Obviously, do note though that it is a 1-2 button playstyle, very similar to Blade Blast. You have to desecrate and then explode corpses, so it's not a one button wonder like Spellslinger. But this is definitely, in my opinion, stronger than Spellslinger for Gauntlet. Now, next up here, we have Spectral Helix and Pale Champ. If I had to really guess, I mean, these two are probably quite even in their power, which will have more damage in Maven related fights and some other fights. Duelist will have more damage for Cirrus and Shaper and, you know, stuff like that, just because of the way DD works. Duelist also, like the champ build, will also inevitably be tankier. You won't have block, but you will have fortify, in my opinion. In this patch, fortify is probably stronger than block. When you combine, you know, spell suppression and, you know, tons of armor and all sorts of stuff like that, I think it's probably going to go better for you than just playing a witch with block. But yeah, it's like give and take. These two, in my opinion, are like very close. They have very clear-cut strengths and weaknesses, and it's hard to tell which is truly better here. So they're like very evenly placed for me. Now for Templar, we have RF Inquisitor. Again, there's a massive gap here. Again, and then you have the rest of the classes, right? So Shadow, like far and away the strongest. Huge gap. Witch and Duelist, huge gap, and then everything else basically. So Templar, RF Inquisitor, this is an insanely tanky build. It is incredibly tanky, but to no surprise for a lot of you, I'm sure, damage is going to be a struggle here. Bosses having twice as much health is going to be a struggle for RF. Granted, it's going to be hard to die, but it's Gauntlet. So at the same time, it won't be hard to die. The build's insanely tanky, but it'll have really low damage output. A lot of the other builds above it are insanely tanky while also having really, really high damage output. So that's basically the differential there. Holy moly, words. But yeah, if you want to play this, you should be fine. This should also be a perfectly fine build for like just getting to like whatever level for MTXs. You can play it, but just where this is really going to fall off is like towards the end game. It's going to probably feel quite bad on a lot of like the bosses and stuff. That being said, I can definitely see people placing with this. I would be very surprised if the top Templars are not playing this. The people who end up winning the class Gauntlet for Templar are not RF Inquisitors. That would be very surprising to me. It's just, you're going to be in for the long haul playing this, especially on a lot of fights. I mean, I think in Alkaiser's practice yesterday, he had like a 20-25 minute A8. I can only imagine how long it's going to be on an RF Inquisitor. Moving on, Marauder. So I have two things here, simply because I think the best thing to play here is probably War Chief Totem Chieftain. But I know a lot of people don't like totems, so I put in something else that I think is a relatively strong contender, which is General's Cry Shield Slam Zerker. So worth noting that last Gauntlet, the top placer for Marauder was a War Chief Totem Chieftain player. And then behind him was, I can't remember who was higher, but it was Elementling playing RF Jug. And lollygate, I think, playing General's Cry Shield Slam. Worth noting that the Elementling and lollygate, the Jug, and the Zerker did not clear all content. I don't even remember if the War Chief Totem Chieftain did, but he got, if he didn't, he got very close, because the point differential was quite large there, if I recall correctly. But yeah, a lot of you are probably surprised because I'm going to be playing Earthshatter Zerker and Gauntlet, and I don't have it on this list. I have practice with it. It is playable if you want to do that. I just don't think it is the most optimal thing. I just don't really want to play General's Cry. And I don't really want to play War Chief Totem Chieftain. To be blatantly honest with you, I want to play something I'm comfortable with in Gauntlet. And I'm not comfortable playing War Chief Totems. It's just, I don't have a lot of experience with it. Same with General's Cry. I mean, it'll be fine. If you want to play it, it'll be okay. I do have reservations here. I think War Chief Totems, like, it's very safe. The damage will be okay. Obviously, mapping's not great. It's going to be a slower build. Basically, a lot of the safety here comes from just being a totem build, right? And then obviously totems are a lot tankier now than they were before. But you just throw them up and then run away, right? That's the safety of that cannot be understated. How much quality of life and actual, like, what a good defense it is to just never have to stand still and only focus on dodging and stuff. It's huge, especially for a GMP boss Gauntlet where they're going to be living for a long time, right? For General's Cry, it's kind of the same thing. You can just kind of like cyclone off in Zimbabwe and let your clones go and hit the boss. It's pretty safe in that sense. You don't really have to it's not very melee in that sense. But if I were to add something else here, Earthshatter Zerk is probably the third build I would put here. I do think these two are just generally safer, and are going to have an easier time in Gauntlet. But again, if you want to play Earthshatter Zerker, feel free. It's definitely doable. Ranger. I had a lot of trouble with this one because I don't think Ranger has any like super good stuff. There's obviously Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder. It's fine, but it's low damage. If you wanted to play that for just like leveling in Gauntlet to get MTXs, you could do that, but bossing on that was already hard in the base game. Bossing with Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder in Gauntlet, where things that have double HP, is going to feel miserable. Even on map bosses, it's probably going to feel bad. Excuse me. Next up is like Elemental Hit, or Elemental Spectral Helix, I should say. Not Elemental Hit. I had bad impressions of that build when I played it. I don't think it's up to Gauntlet standards. It's something you could play again if you wanted to. You could play it. I just don't think it's the best. I end up going Toxic Rain Raider here. It's probably the safest bet. It's just, yeah, Toxic Rain I don't think is a super strong Gauntlet option. That's probably going to surprise a lot of you. Toxic Rain requires a ludicrous amount of gear to really deal with endgame, and that's only more true now that bosses have so much more HP. Because before, Toxic Rain was pretty Z DPS until you crafted good gear. And a lot of the gear, while it is fairly deterministic to craft, you need 8, 9, 10, 11 exalts, depending on how lucky or unlucky you get with your initial hits, right? So getting that many exalts in a league that's only 10 days long and has, you know, a bunch of other things that need to be done in that time span, it's just, that sounds ridiculous to try to get all that gear in that time span. And then even then, you're going to be pretty low damage until you get like really good gear. It seems ridiculous to play Toxic Rain. If you're wondering why I don't have it for the champ, I don't think Toxic Rain champ is a good build for Gauntlet. I don't. Just to make that perfectly clear. Because I've seen a lot of people on Reddit saying that that's what they think it's going to play. I think Toxic Rain in this Gauntlet is a huge, huge, huge trap in a bad way. I think a lot of people are going to play it, and a lot of people are going to get stuck or not have fun. Just my opinion. But I don't think you're going to see it performing super well. But for Ranger, I couldn't really think of anything else to put here. Toxic Rain's probably your best bet. If you don't want to do that, you could do Spectral Helix Elemental on hit, or maybe try out the other thing that I talked about. Finally, Scion. I mean, you can do Fizz Dot Ascendant. You can do that with like Spellslinger with like the Reap and the Exsanguinate setup. You could do like Pure Exsanguinate. Probably not Pure Reap. That sounds Pain Champ. Overall, though, it's probably going to be the weakest thing going into this. It might be above Ranger, honestly, depending. We'll have to see. But I think Ranger and Scion are going to feel pretty bad for Gauntlet overall. That's just my opinion. I could be overlooking some build somewhere, but that's currently where I'm landing with this. So these are the best builds, in my opinion, for each of the classes. So the tier list over here kind of reflects what this notepad is, just without the builds and just purely placing them. Obviously one of every class only, except for Marauder, because I have a Chieftain and Zerker here, respective of their placement, simply because I know a lot of people are gonna look at Marauder, see a totem build, roll their eyes, and move on, right? So if you don't want to play totems, then Zerker's probably here for Earthshatter. It'll definitely do more damage than Inquisitor, but Zerker is just inherently a lot squishier than other classes, so it's really hard to pull off. General's Cry Shield Slam definitely helps mitigate that, because you don't have to interact with mobs as much as you will on Earthshatter, but with Earthshatter, you 100% have to interact with the bosses. You have to be up in their faces. You're a lot squishier than everything else, and yeah, you're not going to have spell suppression and stuff to just completely invalidate the content. Now, moving on. This is a every Ascendancy tier list, so if you wanted to go for demis, these are my ratings. You could also look at this as how much competition you are likely going to have in a given Ascendancy. So looking at this here, obviously Sab's still far and away the best. Coming down here, you have Necromancer and Champ in a league of their own. And then we go down again, and we have Inquisitor. Nothing much has changed here yet. And then you have your Chieftain, and then you have Glad. The Glad build obviously would be Shield Crush, Bleed Glad. And then you have Elementalist. Elementalist is probably for Cold Snap. I think Cold Snap's a little ZDPS, but the people that are playing Cold Snap feel very confident in the build, so they know more about it than I do, so I'll put it here. It should be pretty safe, just again, like lower on the damage side. It's gonna be weird to balance this gauntlet with how much life bosses and stuff are gonna have, and really find out like where the sweet spot is between just like raw damage and raw tankiness. Below that we have Zerker. This is where I have both Earthshatter, and I guess like if you really wanted to, you could move like Shield, General's Cry, Shield Slam up here, but I'm not like a huge believer in the build, so I have it down here. Kind of interchangeable. Really low B, high C, whatever. Here, Raider, Jug, these are kind of interchangeable, as well as Occultist. I think Elementaling will probably play RF Jug again and drag this up by himself. I don't think anyone else is going to play Jug for the most part. Not anyone that I know, at least. For Jug builds, yeah, you could do RF Jug. It would be insanely tanky and insanely ZDPS. There's other builds. I mean, maybe people are going to play Bone Shatter, some other stuff. I'm not really sure what you'd play on Jug. Maybe EQ. I have no idea what you'd play on Jug, honestly. But Elementaling, he did okay last gauntlet with RF, and that play style has gotten massively buffed going into this league. So we'll probably play RF Jug will probably play quite well. It's just again, it's gonna be really low damage. Raider, again, we went over this over here. I don't expect it to be super good. Occultist. Occultist is weird because Occultist is just so squishy. It's a lot like Witch, or yeah, it's a lot like Witch. It's a lot like Necro, where it's very susceptible to fizz damage. Like Occultist just gets absolutely destroyed by physical damage in the game, and typically most Occultists don't get a lot of block. They try to mitigate their weaknesses through other means with, you know, curses or CI or stuff like that. Typically Occultist requires more gear to really get into the end game content in modern PoE, just because of how squishy it can be and how susceptible to one-shots the Ascendancy is, in my opinion. Maybe people are going to play Wintertide here. Maybe some people play Poisonous Concoction, because again, Poisonous Concoction Occultist will still like shred things if you just want to like get levels, but you're not going to be completing any content meaningful. Like you won't be placing top of top of the lists or anything for your class. It's only if you want to get like levels for MTXs. I can't really think of a build that's like super good for Gauntlet. I think what you'll probably see the most of is Wintertide or Cold Dot players on Occultist, but I don't expect it to perform super well. Lastly is Pathfinder. Again, Pathfinder is like Poisonous Concoction. It'll be fine. It'll be relatively tanky as well. It just doesn't have the damage to really do everything in endgame, in my opinion. Moving on, we have Scion, which is only one Ascendancy, right? It's Ascendant. Fizdot, I have Slayer down here as well. Why is Slayer so low? Well, because of the way Fortify works now, if you're not playing slams, you just don't get Fortify. Like, you can't play anything, really. Like, nothing that Slayer can play is going to give them Fortify. And playing melee without Fortify is just running it down. You're griefing. That's why Champ is so high, because you can play Spectral Helix, which has insane damage, but you get Fortify for free from being Champ. If they gave Spectral Helix the melee, like, treatment, because, like, let's be real, Spectral Helix is honestly insanely melee. It's a lot more melee than a lot of other abilities, like Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike gives you Fortify, but Spectral Helix doesn't. That's kind of weird, right? But if Spectral Helix could give Fortify, Slayer might be higher on this list. It would definitely be higher on this list, but it still wouldn't be super high, simply because of the issues in the current league with Fortify. The reason Zerker's up here is because slams hit so incredibly hard, especially on Zerker. You're always going to have Fortify. I've had no problems in Harvest, Delve, etc. getting max Fortify stacks, because when you're hitting like 1 million plus per hit, yeah, you're gonna be fortified regardless of how big that threshold is. Slayer, unfortunately, strike skills, things like that, don't have that luxury. And then obviously Spectral Helix, you can't get Fortify on Spectral Helix. So, like, Slayer just doesn't have anything to really play, realistically. If people play this, you might see some people playing Karn's Onigoroshi build in Gauntlet. Karn himself is not planning to play his Onigoroshi build in Gauntlet, just so you know. But some people might copycat it, just going for a easy demi, because Slayer's probably going to be pretty pain champ in Gauntlet. Moving on, we have Deadeye. I'm just going to lump everything in here together. We have Deadeye, Assassin, Trickster, Hierophant, and Guardian. These are... they're not good. I don't know what to tell you. Good luck playing this. Wherever... I don't have suggestions here. Again, if any of you plan to play one of these for an easy demi, because that's the only situation in which I could possibly conceive you would play any of these in Gauntlet, you don't need me to tell you what to play, because you probably already have a plan if you plan on winning a demi, right? Yeah, don't play these classes, okay? Don't play these classes. Don't play these classes either. I think C is probably the lowest you could possibly go comfortably. And even then, it's still going to be pretty pain champ. I would say, if you want Gauntlet to be easy, play Sab. Sab is 100% stronger than everything else. There should be another, like, everything else. Sab should be here. There should be an empty tier, and then it should be like Witch and Champion, or Necro and Champion, and then everything else, right? Like, Sab is ridiculous in this Gauntlet, okay? It is ridiculous. But yeah, if you really, really don't want to play Sab, then Detonate Dead, Necro, Spectral Helix Champ are my recommendations to you. Beyond that, as you move down this list, you'll just get more and more hipster. And again, if you're planning on winning a demi, you don't need me to tell you what to play. So I would say probably B, high C is the absolute lowest you should go on this list. And be very aware that the lower you go on this list, the harder Gauntlet is going to be for you, okay? People up here have Gauntlet insanely easy. People down here, Gauntlet's a lot harder, okay? So yeah, just be aware of that fact. Anyway, I think I'm gonna end the video here. Thanks a bunch for watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them down below. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. If you don't agree with me, dislike the video and tell me to commit self-harm. If that's what you're into, that's okay. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Friendly reminder that I will be live on Twitch, probably streaming PoE today. As soon as this video goes up. And please, 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 if you've been lurking for a while, maybe consider subbing. I know I always do the spiel at the end of every video, but I would like to hit 500 subs by Christmas. That is my current goal. I want to see if I can hit it. I think I'm like 70 subs or so away right now from it. So yeah, if you guys could help me out, I would appreciate it a bunch. If not, whatever, it's all good. With that, I'm gonna leave you on the Catamario ST even banger track. Anyway. Take it easy, guys. Best of luck in Gauntlet. There may be more videos leading up to Gauntlet. I'm not quite sure. It depends on how I'm feeling and what ideas, you know, come to me in the next coming days. But good luck. Have fun. Don't rip. And if you do, go a game. All right. Good luck in Gauntlet, boys. See ya.